So good morning, everybody. Welcome to a special episode of Environmental Social Justice. Today, I have a good friend, Dr. Michael Amaranthus, who is a retired soil scientist for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, as well as an adjunct professor. So welcome to the show, Mike.
Thanks, Wendy.
And you wrote an amazing children's book called Mycorrhiza. Could you tell us what that's about and why it's so important for soil health?
Well, mycorrhiza is sort of a Irish version of the real organisms in the soil, which are called mycorrhizae. And it kind of came to be because I had studied mycorrhiza with my research jobs with the university and with the USDA. And I wanted to just help kids in a way they could really relate to, understand, where their food comes from, where their water comes from, where wood comes from, and it all starts in the soil. And mycorrhizae play a key role in that. So, we had mycorrhizae in all these different roles: a carpenter, a doctor, a wizard, all these different roles, so they could relate to like these day-to-day life roles that they saw and what the mycorrhizae were doing in the soil.
It wasn't until I started studying sustainability that I realized how important soil health is. And a lot of the farming we do, a lot of the agriculture we do, that includes growing cottons and linens. We are stripping the soils. And soil health is important. And for years, I could not pronounce mycorrhiza because I didn't know how to say it. Right. So calling it mycorrhiza, which your thumbnail will show that. First of all, Linda Woodrow-Gray, who did the illustrations, is amazing. It is the cutest little organism that she illustrated. But connecting with children is huge because they don't, as an adult, we don't get it. Children, they are the future, obviously. I love what you did. Talking about soil health for kids in a very easy to understand way is amazing.
Well, the whole sustainability, and you're well aware of this, is that generation is going to have to deal with a lot of sustainability issues. And the planet's really not that large. And we've had such a big effect in the last couple of generations that, their understanding is going to help to protect the earth and all the values that we take for granted that the earth provides. So, yeah, it's fantastic to be able to reach them.
How exactly does, I read the children's book, which I think is amazing, and you can find it on Amazon. Just going through the basic process, what does the mycorrhiza do to materials in the soil that makes it a wizard, that makes it a carpenter, that makes it a doctor?
Well, they're sort of the roots on the roots. So, they've been around for a couple 100 million years, and they allowed plants to colonize the Earth's surface. So they're like fundamental to the nutrition of plants, and it's how they're like the stomach of the plants. That's how the plant feeds itself. So It's how they get nutrients and water out of the soil. So yeah, it's the stomach of the plant. So it's how it digests food in the soil, and it's fundamental to the nutrition of plants. And we just only begun to appreciate that in the last 50 years. But the cartoon character in the book is like a little ball, which is kind of the colonized root, and it's got like crazy air coming out of it. And that's, Linda was the brilliant behind that, to bring it life to this character. But that's actually how it looks like on a root. The roots are very hairy, and it's these fungal filaments that can extend several feet into the soil on either side of the root. So, and that the filaments are not just passive absorbing threads, they actually are producing enzymes which digest food in the soil, and then they uptake it, and then they transport it back to the plant. So they not only unlock nutrients in the soil and water, but they also absorb it and then transport it back to the plant. So they're keystone species in the soil.
So
and
if we
like I say, they have a lot of roles.
So if anything happens to the mycorrhiza, plant life will greatly suffer. Is that a fair statement to make?
Yeah, the only way to overcome that is to over-fertilize, and then there's a lot of detriments to that. So you have to irrigate more, requires more water because you don't have these absorbing threads, and you have to fertilize more heavily because a lot of the fertilizer is lost. The mycorrhiza capture everything. It's like the World Wide Web. It's like this massive sponge beneath the ground. So it's like a cotton ball. So it's absorbing things off the end of the root. So without that, a lot of nutrients can end up in groundwater and lakes and rivers and streams and stuff because you have to over fertilize this. A lot of the plants in modern agriculture is like they're almost like heroin addicts because you have to supply so much fertility to get
One of my
them to
professors
grow.
called it life support.
Yeah, you
Pump
got
it with life support just to keep the
and
soils alive.
it's really unnatural because 90% of the world's plants form mycorrhizae in their native habitat. So they just don't like disturbance. They don't like a lot of tilling. They don't like certain fungicides that we put on soils to, kill the bad fungi and also kills the good fungi. So, they don't like fallow ground. So they don't like bare ground because they need energy from the plant to survive. So when you have these long periods of fallow where soils are bare, the mycorrhiza die. And so that's the problem, is that we need to keep, plants green and growing on the land so they can do their thing.
Is it fair to say, because I know about this much about mycorrhiza, is it fair to say that it grows over hundreds of acres of land? Like this is a whole underground network that's generated.
Yeah, the biomass is amazing. In fact, a lot of the climate change models are trying to quantify, just how much mycorrhiza is out there. There are significantly agents of sequestration of carbon to get carbon out of the atmosphere and store it in the soil. So that's kind of a primary role they take. And there's actually more carbon in soil than there is vegetation on the earth. There's actually 3 times more carbon in soil than all the vegetation on earth. And there's as much carbon in the soil as there is in the atmosphere. So it's this huge sink for carbon. So
That's
it's
amazing.
really an important role in climate change modeling and how we're going to deal with climate change. Let's put carbon in the soil where it does good and keep it out in the atmosphere where it warms the earth.
No, I agree with that. A lot of people are looking into technology to pull carbon out of the atmosphere, when in reality, it's like we have mycorrhiza, we have plants. There needs to be kind of a jump start, and we need to put the pedal to the metal. But these are very organic, natural resources that we could be using.
Yeah, it's funny because it's so like a lot of the techie space age methods are super expensive, and they're unproven. But plants, mycorrhizal fungi, adding compost, humics to soils, all of the cover cropping, we already know how to do that. We could do that on millions of acres and totally offset all our carbon emissions. In the United States, we could totally offset all of our carbon emissions by growing plants organically and adding some of these carbon-based amendments to the soil. So, we have the technology. It's been used for thousands of years. We just need to get the farm community and kids. The next generation. It's going to take, these kids are going to be the leaders for tomorrow. So their understanding, I think, is important. But it's amazing to me that it's taken this long, because really the knowledge has been out there. I wrote my first climate change and carbon and mycorrhiza paper in 1990.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it was like, now it's becoming more common knowledge, but it's 30 years ago.
We weren't ready. I get it. People
thought it was crazy.
Yeah.
And also the reviewers really gave me a lot of grief about this thing, because it was kind of ahead of its time, but it's getting more and more out there. I would recommend for your listeners, there's a Netflix show called Kiss the Ground.
Yep.
And Woody Harrelson is the narrator, and there's all kinds of, really neat stories about, this journey to try and do regenerative agriculture where we put carbon in soil. So it's really well done. The graphics are like incredible. And all my friends and family that have watched it just think, now I understand. You have to put things in a way that aren't so technical, aren't so full of jargon, where people can really understand what's going on.
The whole point of ESJ, get rid of the jargon, get rid of the acronyms. Everyone needs to understand so they can react appropriately.
Yeah, it's technology transfer. It's about taking, complex science ideas and put them in everyday
Yes.
ways that people can understand. And that's why for the kids, like Mycorrhiza is like, he's a wizard, he's a miner, he's an internet expert, he's a conductor, he's a carpenter, he's a policeman, he's a doctor, he's a parent. I mean, these are all things that they see in their daily life. And Linda really, the illustrator,
Oh, the
Linda
illustrations are
Woodrow,
beautiful.
yeah, I mean, I could never have done this without someone to give it shape and meaning.
And not just the quality of the work, but she created such a cute little image that you can relate to. You are fighting for this little guy.
Right.
You support.
She's kind of a mushroom fanatic too. We went out in the woods. This kind of all started. She was my pickleball partner,
Yes.
and I knew she was talented. I knew she was quite the artist, but I had no idea she was this talented.
Hugely
and,
talented. Yes.
We went out mushroom hunting one day, and then she came back and she started drawing some of the mushrooms that she had seen in the forest. I thought, wow.
Oh, yeah, I saw some of that. She did a morel that was just so finely
did.
detailed.
Wow. Yeah, she's got the eye. So she was very easy to work with. And she improved the book tremendously with her insight into what should be on each page. And yeah, so I think we're going to try and do some more.
You should do like a little cartoon. I mean, I think that this could reach the masses and educate the kids on what, the importance of soil and agriculture is.
Yeah, I think we're going to kind of see how it goes, but yeah, I think we'd like to do some follow up on that, and maybe there's a cartoon in the future. I want to do like a little pocket guide for people that want to learn about, the good edible mushrooms and the poisonous mushrooms and the hallucinogenic mushrooms, and just pick like 30 that are really distinct that they should know, and these things occur in their yards, across the street, in the parks, golf courses. And so people, because I think once they are more hands-on with, they're not afraid of, like a lot of people are afraid of fungi because they moldy bread and itchy toes, they just like, fungus.
Well, no, I mean, if I see a mushroom in the woods, I'm like, poisonous, run away. When in reality, it could actually be eaten.
There's actually more poisonous plants than there are poisonous mushrooms.
And you see, that's important to know because we are all raised, don't eat the mushrooms, they could kill you.
Right. And for good reason. I mean, you got to know it to consume it. But, and that's what, the next book will be about, is just how to identify it and dangerous lookalikes and make it fun, make it like, because mushroom people tend to be like characters. Yes. So there's all kinds of fun stories about, collecting mushrooms and being out in the woods and how you prepare them and, drinking wine while you're collecting mushrooms and whatever you do, it's a lot of fun. It's just being outdoors is fun.
And that's also very important, is teaching people to go outdoors, hunt around, forage, learn. It's not all about what you get at the grocery store.
And that's a lot about what for the kids, too. And kind of my own grandkids is sort of the impetus, because they knew that I like to collect mushrooms, and we had done that with them when they had been out with me collecting mushrooms, and they enjoyed foraging and just like treasure hunting, but they really didn't really understand, where food comes from, or where water comes from, or where wood comes from, or
exactly,
how the soil does that. I mean, how does it just magically appear, or, how do plants grow, so that was the impetus for the book. It's just, kids need to know where their food comes from.
Yeah, and I love the fact that, it's an educational book without being overly educational. It's fun. It's a fun read. It's a cute story.
I think the parents will learn as much as the kids, to be honest.
Oh, I did. I read it and I was like, oh, that's good to know, because I had no idea.
Because some of these roles that we just figured out in the last 10 years with some of these roles that mycorrhiza play, the fact that they can communicate and link plants and warn plants, about insect attacks, or warn plants against pathogens in the soil, and all that the way they communicate beneath the ground is really happened in the last 5 to 10 years. So it's pretty interesting, this whole idea that the plants are communicating and actually helping each other grow and sharing resources and warning each other. And
that's kind of when you think about that. Yeah, it's so complicated, but not.
Yeah, I mean, there are a bunch of strings in the soil and they link plant roots together. So, I mean, one fungus can link a whole array of plants, hundreds of plants can be linked by the
Entire
same
forest. Yeah.
mycorrhizal fungus. So, and they're exchanging information, and the plant is, getting its, nutrition from the fungus, but the fungus is also getting its food from the plant. So it's mutually beneficial. The fungus depends on the plant for sugars that fuel its
Oh,
growth. So it's in the plant's best interest and the fungus' best interest to make the both flourish.
so
So
symbiotic
the
relation.
fungus wants the plant to keep pumping the ground with sugar because that's the energy that goes into all these organisms, their ability to grow. So
That's so great. I
it's
mean,
fun. Yeah, there's some pretty neat things. The other really good show that for your audience to look at is Fantastic Fungi. That's a Netflix too. Beautiful photography, time lapse
oh,
videos, and
I've seen
a
that.
great story too. So it's about fungus as medicine, and it touches on the mycorrhizal parts of things. And
I
you know
have
the,
I have fallen into the rabbit hole of watching fungus grow under time lapse, and it's spectacular.
yeah, it's really cool.
And the
And
bioluminescence that some of them have, I mean, there's a whole nother world that most people aren't aware of.
yeah, and it's mysterious. And I think the Fantastic Fungi of the show really kind of captures the mystery and what some of the potential benefits are, and not only ecological but for medical purposes. And
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
really well done.
Yeah, as you said, we need to kind of focus less on all this new tech that's out there and look at what we already have naturally, because
Yeah.
there might be more to it than what people realize.
Well, hundreds of millions of years of evolution, these organisms got pretty clever about surviving and
One
the
would
roles
hope.
that they play. So, yeah.
One would hope. No, this is brilliant. I love the book. And so, just letting people know, Mycorrhiza, you can get it on Amazon. Are you doing any book tours? Anything like that coming up?
We did a book reading the other day at a place called the Weekend Beer Company. It was great because the parents could all drink beer and they brought all the kids. But
You got me a beer.
we had about 50 kids at this event, and probably over 100 people attended, and we sold pretty much all the books that we had. So
That's great.
it's being very well received. And again, the credit really goes to Linda because she's made it so fun to look at. And
Yeah, the illustrations are beautiful, but the content is just as important.
Well,
I love how you put it out there in a simple way, easily understood.
It's funny. I was actually we were on vacation, and I was talking to we were like talking to my grandkids on the phone, and we were talking about hunting mushrooms and what were we going to do when I got back, and getting together. And I realized they really could use some basic education on the soil, and because they're modern kids, they're on their computers all the time. So I woke up the morning and really wrote the whole book, like just sat down and wrote the book. Linda made a lot of really good suggestions to make it, even more understandable and stuff. But all the roles of the mycorrhiza just were there the next morning when I woke up. So it was been like in my mind for, I guess, longer than I had known, And
Well,
it all came out that day. It was just like crazy,
And the simplification is so important because, I think it was Albert Einstein that said, the true definition of genius is being able to explain something simply. And I've always used that rule of thought when I meet a lot of scientists and a lot of engineers and even financial folks. When they, you ask them to explain it and they only use the jargon, they only use the acronyms. It's like, I don't think you fully understand it as much as you think you do.
I tell you what, because I've been doing mycorrhizal research since the late 70s, I read some of my early papers and I can't understand what I was saying. Some of those research papers it's so full of jargon.
Yep.
It's so full of technical terms. It's incomprehensible. And, it's my own stuff. I can't understand it. So I can only imagine. I really prefer to.
Simplicity is best. That's why everything I try to communicate out there is simplified, because, and it's also a gut check for me. If I can't explain it simply, that means I don't know it well enough, and I got to go back to the books.
Yeah. And now that I'm retired, I mean, I really don't have the impetus. You know, in the old days, you had to publish so many papers a year, and you
Publish
had
or
to do
perish.
original research, and it's a lot of work. But I think the reason there's enough information out there right now to make change. We just need to be able to communicate it. I know the farm bill that's coming out has like a special funding source for regenerative ag,
Oh,
which is good. So they're starting that, we've always sort of subsidized conventional agriculture and industrial agriculture. They always got price subsidies and price supports and stuff, where we should shift that to healthy food production, regenerative ag, and,
crazy, right?
putting more mineral nutrients into food. And, it should shift from the conventional paradigm of, industrial ag. It kind of destroys the soil, to put carbon in soil, make soil healthier. I mean, we've lost about 80% of the carbon in soils in the last 150 years. So we got to start putting it back. It's imperative. So it's good to see that the Farm Bill is going to have some incentives
awesome.
for healthy farming activities.
No, that's awesome that they're doing that, because we did some damage. We're all guilty of doing quite a bit of damage, and we need to fix it. And what I keep saying over and over again is we need to stop talking and start doing. No more conferences, no more meetings, no more discussions, no more papers.
Right.
We know
Well,
what
I
needs
think your show is an example of trying to get the word out, and it's going to take a lot of outlets and a lot of different things. It's happening. So I'm glad I lived long enough to see it start to happen. I was starting to wonder.
Yeah, no, I mean, we've been talking about it for decades.
Right.
Decades. And now it's time, let's start doing. And we're seeing that movement. And so
it's all hands on deck is the way I look at it.
Oh yeah.
All hands on deck, because it's getting pretty serious out there in terms of the effects of climate change.
And we're seeing it actively and aggressively, unfortunately. So
I live in Oregon.
Yeah.
And I picked tomatoes last week
in December
in Oregon. It hadn't froze.
Oh my God.
It's not right. I mean,
no,
it's weird.
No, it is weird. There's weirdness.
Yeah, I mean, it's strange. In my lifetime, I've been here 40 years. It's like, it just never freezes anymore. It's crazy. And, we have a house on a lake up at Howard Prairie Lake, which is outside of Ashland, Oregon. And it dried up. The lake dried up.
Oh.
I mean, you could walk across the lake. And there hasn't been water in the lake much water in the lake for 3 or 4 years, but then it completely dried up this year. It's like,
oh, wow.
Wow. It's frightening, really.
It is frightening. I mean, I live in California, and we are in heavy drought, and it's going to get worse before it gets better.
Yeah.
And we need to start taking action. And but getting back on topic about you and your book.
Okay, sorry.
No,
it's an environmental show, so we're
it is environment, and I tend to drift as well, and there's so much to talk about that I could go on for hours, but I do want to make sure people know that they can find you and find your book. Are you in local bookstores, or is it just Amazon? Or
I think there's 40. It's Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Apple Books. And I think there's 40 retail distributors that have kind of picked up the book. So Kindle, anything, however you want to. If you want to get a soft cover or you want to get an electronic version, it's available. But I think, Barnes and Noble, Apple Books, or Amazon are the most common. The Kindle approach is, you just put Mike, M-I-K-E, and then O and apostrophe Riza.
And that's R-H-I-Z-A.
R-H-I-S-A.
Oh yeah, sorry, my bad.
No, it's a Z. You're right.
It is a Z. Okay, thank you. I'm like, oh shoot, what did I read? Because
yeah, but yeah, mycorrhiza, it'll come up.
That's awesome. I love what you're doing. Keep doing more. Please come back when you have the next book to discuss, because I think a field guide that's easy to read to identify mushrooms and fungus would be amazing. And thank you so much for sharing your time.
Thanks, Wendy. Keep it going with environmental social justice. It's awesome.
Thank you. Oh, Lord knows I'm trying. You guys take care. We'll see you next time.
Take care.